And we're live with a disappointing, but we're here to talk about it, Forever Mighty postgame show. Ducks lose to the Sharks 3-0 in a shutout loss in Game 1, as we just said, at Honda Center. The series is off on the wrong foot, Eddie. I don't know what to say. It just, people, I think, are over-panicking at this loss. I feel like it's just one game. It's hard to judge how this series is going to go. Both teams had time off before the playoffs started. It's just, I don't know. I'm not super disappointed. I feel like the Ducks could work on some things, but that second period was about it. Third period, Sharks shut it down. But going into this game, did you expect this, this kind of Sharks play, kind of just back off?
No, I mean, I haven't watched a lot of their play through the regular season, so I'm not sure if this is something they usually do or not, but they did a very good job defending the Ducks in the neutral zone, and really they couldn't get anything going to get in to the Shark zone, and it was just stifling defense and then picking their opportunity on offense. And really, I mean, it wasn't as bad a game as it's being portrayed as. There's a lot of things the Ducks could work on, but I think there was some things in there, if you dig deep enough, that look pretty good. If you're going into Game 2, if they can fix up some of the things on the surface, they have a good chance of turning the series around. I mean, it's Game 1, and I get it. I mean, we're all disappointed. This isn't how we expected it to go after all the, winning 5 games in a row going into the playoffs, snatching home ice away from the Sharks, and then losing Game 1 in unenthusiastic fashion. It's disappointing, but there's still 6 games to go. There's a lot of time left for the Ducks to get back in this series.
I mean, look, the Ducks hit posts. They had chances in the crease. They weren't able to cash in. And that's just, quite frankly, where they missed their opportunities. I mean, The Sharks took advantage of a power play, a very undisciplined Anaheim team starting in the second period, which cost them big time. They got caught in a bad line change there also with Vander Kane's second goal. And, it was just a matter of the Sharks capitalizing and the Ducks not at their chances. I didn't feel like the Ducks were completely overplayed, or outplayed, rather. Jones didn't have to make a bunch of saves, but he did what he needed to do to get the win. And like you said, it was just a stifling defensive effort by the Sharks once they had the lead. And when you have Brent Burns on the ice, that guy controlled a lot of play in this game. Very impressed with Brent Burns on the blue line for the Sharks.
Yeah, and we talked about how he was going to be a key piece for them, and I mean that's a pretty obvious take. Really, is he's going to be the catalyst for this blue line and to really drive play on offense for the Sharks. But yeah, I mean he played a solid game all around, not just his offense, obviously getting the goal as well, but really defensively he carried the load for the Sharks. And we talked about how Paul Martin was going to be a question mark on that pairing with Brent Burns, but it didn't look that bad. I mean, it was a decent pairing for the Sharks, and Brent Burns had an outstanding game. And, it's tough to look at it and say the Ducks aren't going to be able to overcome it because, it's a 3-0 win from the Sharks, but there are some things, and we'll talk about them later, like I already mentioned, that, they didn't look that bad. If you dig into it, Kessler's line actually did a pretty good job of shutting down Pavelski's line 5-on-5, despite them getting that one goal, and then obviously the power play goal. And there's a couple other things that the Ducks did pretty well, despite some of the things on the surface. So it's tough. I mean, we're all disappointed, but we'll move on to Game 2, and hopefully they can change some things up.
Well, before we get there, we got to break down the game, but let's get to our pregame report. John Gibson back at net for the Ducks, which was just exciting for everybody across the board. A lot of doubts about his health, but he was able to get in the crease tonight and start Game 1 after missing 3 of the last regular season games. Look at tonight's scratches. Kevin Bieksa still out. Cam Fowler, as we all know, has the mystery that no one's reporting on shoulder injury that's classified as upper body. Most likely won't see him, as we've talked about before. Holzer, a scratch, Chimera, and Captain Canada, as well as Troy Terry, are all scratches tonight. Interesting, Terry didn't play in favor of Antoine Vermette. Something about the face-off prowess that Randy Carlyle seems to love. I'm not sure if that's the case, but it just kind of seems like that's the only thing that Vermette has to bring to the table. Interesting and scary for Ducks fans, I guess. Joe Thornton took warm-ups tonight, but did not partake in the line rushes. He was just making an appearance to show everybody in the crowd that he's here, and he's close to coming back. And as we all know, as we broke down before this game, the Sharks were 3-0-1 in this season series, but all games except for one were all in a shootout victories. So for the Sharks wins anyway. So the series has a chance to be close. And like we just said, the Ducks were not far away. But let's get off with the show, Eddie, and start the intro.
Trying to get by Benning. Darnell Nurse left it in the corner, gets up center. Perry scores! Corey Perry!
Lilia able to shake away from Solani. It's given away to Solani. Around in front. Score! Teemu Solani with the steal.
And the fans want one. Score! Off the floor! On the board! Paul Kariya!
Before we get into the breakdown, I mean, Ruben brings up a point that we've already mentioned here, but he said it's only one game. No need to worry yet. There's going to be a game two and possible games past. I mean, there's no need to get worried yet and think that the Ducks are out of this series. I mean, it's just one game, and there's plenty of time left.
Wasn't the greatest game, but yeah, no, exactly. And this is the first game of a series is never a telltale sign about how it's going to go. It's just not. Yeah. Now, if the Ducks lose both games on home ice, then you're looking at a problem because it's going to be much harder to win in HP. But I think the Ducks have a chance to come back and even the series up here on Saturday. He's totally right. No one should be panicking right now. Obviously, you're disappointed, especially if you were there. You're disappointed. Nobody wants to see that happen when you're paying money to go to a playoff game. But it happens. It just happens.
Yeah, I mean, I get the frustration, and really we saw a lot of people leaving early from Honda Center, which I guess in some instances is understandable, right? I mean, it was just a disappointing game. It's not like, it's not like it was a blowout from San Jose, and it didn't even really feel like a close game at times either. It was just a boring game. The Ducks couldn't really muster up anything. I mean, Martin Jones ends up making, I think, 26 saves on the night for a shutout. And really, he wasn't challenged that much. A lot of the chances that the Ducks got their best opportunities were fired right into the crest. And that was it. I mean, there was a chance where Kessler ends up hitting the post, and I think that was one of the best chances the Ducks had the entire game. But other than that, pretty much all the chances we saw were fired right at him.
Yeah, just going into the first period, I mean, this period was like a very long feeling out period, I felt like, for both teams. Wasn't a lot of offense going back and forth here in the first period. Big hit to start it off. Timo Meier, who'd be a physical force in this game early on, levels Kasha. Burns actually hits the post. There was no shots on goal for either team in the first 4 minutes and 27 seconds, which is pretty crazy to me considering all the firepower on both these teams. In fact, the Ducks didn't even get a chance to get a shot on goal until J.T. Brown did it 7 minutes in as a penalty was expiring. He got his first shot and then hit the rebound. So we said stifling defense in the pregame, and that's exactly what the Ducks entered into here in the first period.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head saying both teams are just kind of feeling each other out. I mean, they've seen each other 4 times this season, or I think maybe, 4 times this season, but not since February. So they haven't really seen each other in a while, and they're just kind of feeling each other out, seeing what each other's going to bring to the table, and that pretty much equates to no offense in the first 10 minutes of the hockey game, when really the only good chance the Ducks had was the one that you said by J.T. Brown. It was actually a pretty good move for him. It showed a nice burst of speed, got in on the backhand, and got a decent chance on Martin Jones, but not much going on. I mean, it was kind of a trend throughout the entire game, but they were just nothing happening in the beginning part of the first period.
No, I mean, not until a crazy bounce goes off the inboards, deflects back out, and it goes into the pads of Martin Jones, who's standing up, goes out in front of that. Lindholm is able to get a stick on it as the puck's bouncing, ends up nicking the glove of Jones and going wide. That was a chance there. Obviously, not much Lindholm could do there, right? I mean, it wasn't like the puck was just sitting on a plate for him to dish it in. It just happened to bounce and hit the pad of Jones. Unfortunately, the score would remain scoreless. And then we all had to take a collective sigh of relief in the next play, because everyone's after John Gibson and his injury proneness. That's been a huge topic of discussion here the past couple of weeks. Timo Meier goes just dragging Montour right into Gibson, hits him up high. I thought for a minute there they were calling a penalty on Montour, to be honest with you, as Gibson goes down into the net. He's able to pop back up. He's just fine, no worse for wear. So everyone there breathes a collective sigh of relief, like I said. And it ends up being Timo Meier that goes to the box there. But wouldn't have that been just the worst thing ever in the first period of game one to see an injury happen to our goalie?
That would be typical from what we've seen throughout the regular season. I mean, if some people have their way, John Gibson apparently doesn't have any injury problems, so we wouldn't have to worry about that too much. But yeah, I mean, it was an interesting play because I honestly thought too that the Ducks were going to get a penalty off that play. Even the broadcast I was watching, which was not the Ducks regular broadcast, I was watching the USA Live one with Mike Johnston, which we were pretty jealous about. But I was
very jealous. I love Mike Johnston.
It was a pretty good broadcast, but they thought that Gibson was going to get a penalty because he gets a little kick in on Timo Meier when he's down on the ice. Yeah, so they thought he was going to get a penalty for that. I thought he was going to get a penalty for that too, based off what they had said. And then it ends up that Timo Meier somehow gets a penalty, which of course it benefits the Ducks. But are we surprised really that it was an awful power play? I mean, this is the 23rd ranked power play in the NHL versus the second best penalty kill. And the Ducks' power play has looked bad all season, so I mean, we're not too surprised.
No, and it's a disappointment that they came up short because they don't get very many of those power plays in this game, and to cash in early like that would have been great for them. But then we see Kessler. We talked about dumb penalties going into this series and how the Ducks had to stay disciplined. I remember mentioning the pests, guys like Perry, Kessler, Bieksa, Ritchie, guys that get under people's skin, taking dumb penalties. Just a complete interference there on Hurdle by Ryan Kessler. He sits, and it just develops into a power play the Sharks almost score on early. Hurdle gets chances there. Gibby forced to make some big stops. And then we saw a chance that I really, really thought Raquel got on net until I didn't realize that it was the skate up. I think Pavelski ends up hitting in front of the net. Raquel's able to dangle in, can't finish. Just kind of the story there. He had a couple of chances. Or the Ducks had a couple of chances to score, and Pavelski has had his skate in the way a couple of times there. So the Ducks have come close. They had their chances in tight, weren't able to get involved in front of the net enough to bury it, I guess. But that would wrap up the end of the first period. They ended up getting outshot 8-4. Sharks scoring chances was actually in favor of the Ducks 7-5. Am I reading that right? Because it didn't feel like it. But yeah, or 7 to. Where am I at here? Looking at
7-5.
Yeah, 7 to. Yeah. Just I don't know, man. I thought it was pretty surprised when I saw that because it felt like the Ducks, besides the one by Lindholm, there wasn't anything all too crazy being developed by the Ducks. But that's at the end of the period, 0-0.
Imagine if Raquel is able to connect on that goal. I mean, we saw a pretty nice goal from Philip Forsberg in that Nashville game today where he pulled the puck between his legs. But if Raquel's able to put that in the back of the net, that's probably goal of the night, I would think. I mean, he makes 2 toe drags to get it to his backhand. Obviously, the shot doesn't get on net, but he's been doing that all season. And he's so underrated in his handles and what he can do with the puck. And those 2 moves, I mean, in tight, getting around pretty much 3 or 4 Sharks players and then almost getting a shot on net. It's just insane, some of the things this guy can pull out in tight spaces.
Yeah, and my stat for scoring chance, by the way, that was 5-on-5. So obviously you count the Sharks power play much different when it wasn't 5-on-5. But starting off in the second period, Hurdle line is getting chances. I felt like that line was playing really, really well tonight. They were getting a lot of shots, a lot of chances in on Gibson. Gibby had to come up big. He had to come up really big on this play, and then he goes back the other way. Kosha with a chance or shot. Sorry, I'm like fumbling my word there. Huge save by Jones on the power play, and then we get the chance that you talked about. Kessler rings one off the post. He was wide open, tried to go far side on Jones, just couldn't complete the play, and that's kind of where it all kind of went downhill. I felt like after that, it was Sharks power play. And I don't know, man. I don't know about how you feel about this, but the Ducks take another penalty on when they're already on the penalty kill. Getzlaf, I mean, he's pretty much forced to having to take that call. Yeah. As LeBlanc was in all alone. Sharks would end up converting on the 5-on-3. Pavelski, it's wide open. Evander Kane, and all of a sudden it's 1-0.
Yeah, I mean, they're penalties for sure. Both of them are slashy penalties, but it's such a tough situation to put you in because Getzlaf has to make that play because nobody is doing a good enough job to. I think he slashes Hurdle, right? Nobody's really covering him. Getzlaf has to turn around and slash him so he doesn't get a good chance off. And then from there, I mean, you're putting not the best power play in the league, but you're putting a very deadly power play on a 5-on-3, and it was almost inevitable that they were going to score a goal. They were looking good already, and then Evander Kane is alone in front. You can't blame Gibby on this one. I mean, he really